Hi, this is Mrs. Slater, and today we're going to start factoring. And in the first part, I just want to talk about what the rules of factoring are. So when you look for rules of factoring, the very first thing that you are going to do is always check for the greatest common factor. So if you check to see if anything can factor, this means the greatest number that you can divide every term by. So in this first example, if you look at the coefficients 2, 6, and negative 12, the number 2 will go into each one of them. And then if you look at the x's, there is one x that they all have in common. So I'm going to take out 2x, and then what I'm left with is 3 x's left over for that very first term. And if I take 2x out of the next one, which really just means you're dividing by it, you're going to be left with 3x. And if you divide out 2x into the last one, I'm left with a negative 6. Okay, so that is what I mean by taking out the greatest common factor. Now, I also want you to practice a couple, and then we'll discuss them in class. The first one I want you to do is 3x squared minus 6x. Take out the greatest common factor of that one. And then the second one is 6x squared y minus 21x cubed y squared. And then 3x squared y cubed. Go ahead and take the greatest common factor out of each one of them, and then we'll discuss them tomorrow. The second rule of factoring is counting your terms, because that's going to be very important on what you pick to do next. The two things that could have two terms in it are squares and cubes. Okay, so the first one we're going to talk about is squares. And then you can look at this one step at a time here. To factor a difference, notice it has to be difference of perfect squares. You always are going to have two sets of parentheses. Okay, signs are always one positive and one negative, no matter what. And then you take the square roots of each term. So in this first example, 16 is a perfect square, and so the square root of that is 4 and 4. And you end up with x plus 4x minus 4. And then I want you to try the next one. And then also just be aware to start memorizing these if you haven't done it already. Common perfect squares are in this list. Notice that I have some variables in there. You're going to see those as well as common perfect squares. Okay, and then a couple more that I would like you to practice. Emphasize a couple more things, like this one, 49 x to the 4th minus 25 y to the 10th. So you've got to be careful with this one because of the two perfect squares on each end. So 7 would get split. X to the 4th would get split, as I mentioned before. Anything to the 4th would be a nice perfect square. 25 would get split, and y to the 10th gets split. Okay, and then as it says here as one of the rules, one's going to be plus and one's going to be minus, and that would be your final answer. Okay, and then the fourth one I would like you to do as well, and that is 36x to the 4th minus 16y to the 6th. So both of those, have those done for class tomorrow. There also is a situation where you may have two terms, but it's going to be prime. If you recall, then it had difference of perfect squares, and both of these are the sum of perfect squares. So if you ever run into a situation like this, you would just put that the answer is prime for both of them. Also, two terms is going to be sum or difference of cubes. And the format you're going to see, you'll have one binomial and one trinomial for your answer every time. And then also, the signs are going to be SOAP. Now, you may have already referred to SOAP. Just remember SOAP. because the last one is always positive. So that is where the A is coming from. So maybe you've learned it as SOP also. But the signs will be the same as the original, opposite of the original, and always positive. And I'll show you what that means. Here's the example. If you have x cubed minus 8, your answer will be same sign. So that is the same sign as the original. And then opposite of the original, so that would be plus, and then always positive. So that's going to be your last one. Now when you actually solve it, you're going to take the cube root of x cubed. And that's what's going to go in the first spot. The second thing you're going to do is take the cube root of the second term, which is 8. And that's going to go in the second spot. Okay, so then you're going to square the first term, and that's what's going to go in the trinomial. Then you're going to multiply the two terms together, the x and the 2, and that's where the 2x is coming from. And then finally, you're going to square the last term. So what happens is 2 times 2 is 4. So always do the signs first, because I think that'll be very helpful when it comes down to the end. And then square the first, multiply the two together, and square the last. Also, you should be aware of the common perfect cubes, and notice that we have x cubed and y cubed in that area. That is also good for you to visually see that and know that you may have a common perfect cube. So let's try some examples of this. And the first one is a sum of cubes. 27 is one of the common ones. And my answer should be a binomial and a trinomial. So it's going to look something like that. And then the signs will be the same as the first, or the original, opposite of the original, and then always positive. So we're going to fill in those as we go. Okay, so if I take the cube root of c, it is c cubed, that is, it is c, and the cube root of 27, that is going to be 3. Then in the first spot, I'm going to square the first term, multiply the two greens together, and then square the 3. And that's your answer. Okay, let's try another one. 125 x cubed plus 8 y cubed. Okay, now it's a sum of cubes again. So let's get our signs ready to go. It's plus sign, so it's going to be the same as the original, opposite of the original, and always positive. Now for the perfect cube of 125x cubed. We've got to take all of that in consideration, and that's going to be 5x cubed. So I'm going to put 5x in this first spot. It should be just 5x, by the way. And then if I'm going to find the perfect cube of 8y cubed, the perfect cube of 8 is 2, and then perfect cube of y cubed is y. Okay, and then for the trinomial, I would square 5x squared, and that's what I'm going to put here. And then I'm going to multiply the two of them together to get 10xy. And then finally, I'm going to square the last term, which would give me 4y squared. And that is your final answer. So all this other stuff you may need to do as scratch work. Now for a couple I want you to try before class tomorrow. Go ahead and write those down. And this concludes our lesson for today.